We're back on the subject of Ridge Holland, and this guy is getting DP'd by TKO. He's an incredibly sympathetic figure right now. We're going to go through all of this stuff on Ridge Holland. Apparently, they canceled his contract, so apparently he's fired now. So it went from the guy just not being renewed to being fired, which is of course different. And it is seemingly the opposite of what I asked WWE to do, which is to look out for the guy who's been hurt, you know? So it all started on early November. It was like November the 4th, thereabouts, where Ridge Holland, aka Luke Menzies, mm, put out a statement saying, I never thought I'd not be able to pay my mortgage. I feel like I've just been hung out to dry after getting injured working for another company on behalf of WWE. Add to that my contract not being renewed, knowing that wouldn't be able to wrestle for 7 months. This is brutal. Yes, they are taking care of the surgery and physical therapy, but let's be honest. That's the bare minimum after what we sacrificed for the company. Plus the possibility of having to get my next fused too. Talk about getting totally fucked. And people were spreading this around, and then WWE apparently decided to end his contract. So around yesterday, which would be November the 5th, it was announced that Luke Menzies' contract was canceled. So it says, according to a report from Fightful Select, Luke Menzies' aka Ridge Holland WWE deal was terminated early. Fightful confirmed with WWE sources that the word within WWE was that they considered some of his recent posts a breach and the call was made to release him from his deal early. The report notes that Menzies' deal was originally set to expire in mid November, and he was scheduled to be paid for that period. However, it was strongly suggested that he won't be paid for the remaining period. This action comes while Menzies is sidelined with an injury sustained on September 27th, which has made him unable to wrestle and sidelined him well into 2026. Menzies had previously noted he was not paid additionally for his TNA appearance. Fightful Select also reported that WWE has continued providing for his rehab, as, quote, they would almost certainly open themselves up to legal action if they didn't. So, uh, interesting. Interesting. Then another story came out that says WWE weren't happy that Ridge Holland said that he might not be able to pay his mortgage following his release. So Meltzer adds, in your deal, you're not supposed to talk badly about the company in public. And so they felt that they now have the right to fire him. It's going to cost them. It'll either be 1 week's pay or 2 weeks' pay because he wasn't getting paid beyond November 14th anyway. They didn't need to do it. I guess they felt that however you can want to look at it, they want to send a message to everyone out there that if you say anything bad, you can be cut. And that's what happened. I have been told the other side from them, which is essentially that he should have known from last year that the way everything went down, he wasn't going to be under WWE much longer either way. He was getting paid through the end of the WWE deal. Their feeling is, well, when you know that is happening, you should adjust your finances and everything like that. At the end, I may lose my mortgage. They weren't happy he said that. Interesting. Interesting. I'm going to respond to everything once I get all of this on the record. So a GoFundMe was launched for Ridge Holland, to which Chelsea Green generously is going to be giving him $1,000 a month to make sure he keeps his home. So it says, help a father of three heal without losing everything. A hardworking husband, a devoted wife, three beautiful children, and a devastating injury that threatens to take it all away. We're reaching out with heavy hearts on behalf of a dear family in crisis. A loving father of three suffered injuries whilst on the job, injuries that have not only left him unable to work, but also abandoned by the very company he served. Despite being injured at work, he was hired as a 1099 contractor, meaning he's not eligible for worker compensation, sick leave, or any support from the employer. Since the injury, the company has offered to pay for the medical expenses, but no pay and no new contract. The family has already endured a 55% pay cut last year and have done everything possible to reduce their expenses. He is now facing months of recovery, including another surgery in March of next year and potentially a neck surgery this month, leaving him unable to work until at least late April or early May if recovery goes as hoped. His wife, who is already stretched thin caring for him and their three young children, is doing her best, but without any nearby family or support system, it's simply not enough. Every day is a struggle mentally and physically. They would like to provide a sense of stability for their children who are watching their world slowly unravel. They're doing everything they can, but it's not enough. They are at risk of losing their home, of falling into debt that they may never escape, of having their kids face a holiday season filled with fear and uncertainty rather than joy. This family needs a lifeline and they need it now. Your donation, no matter the size, will give them time and space to heal, regroup, and rebuild without losing everything they worked so hard for. Please give what you can and share this campaign with your community. Every share, every prayer, and every dollar means the world to this family. Together, we can help make it through this unimaginable season and into a more hopeful future. This fundraiser has been created to help this beautiful family through the months ahead, to keep a roof over their heads, food on the table, pay the bills, cover travel to hospital appointments, and give him a chance to focus on healing without the constant fear of financial collapse. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Very interesting stuff here. Extremely interesting stuff here. And at that point, I believe everything is on the record. I don't think there's anything extra that has come out since. So, okay, well, there's one more thing. One more thing. So, Meltzer put out here, quote, if WWE talent works for AAA, which is part of WWE anyway, or if they work for TNA, they don't get paid extra because everybody is on a guaranteed contract. You make this much, they book you as they see fit. It could be for other companies. That's just how it works right now. From their standpoint, based on previous generations and even a year or two ago, the fact is that you are going to be working far less dates for the guaranteed money and that you would have been even a year ago because they cut back on shows. So, because they cut back on shows, and it's essentially for most people 1 day a week, that they might book you a second day a week for a TNA taping or to go to AAA. Whatever the deal is, it's like you're starting a lot less dates than most people they are expected to work when they actually sign the deal in the first place. Okay, so we got a whole lot of different issues here. We got the moral issue, we got the economic issue, we got legal issues. There's a whole lot of stuff going on here. For starters, I think there is obviously some frustration from Ridge Holland and his side. Clearly, he expected to keep his job. There was a story couple of weeks ago that they mentioned it in the GoFundMe that he took a pay cut last year in order to keep his job. Because remember, he was on SmackDown. This guy has been on a precipitous fall since his time on SmackDown. He was moved to NXT for a while, and then he was moved to Evolve, and then they were basically hiring him out to TNA before finally just getting rid of him. So his slide down the pole has been pretty consistent over the last year or two. I can understand his frustration. He was trying to keep his job. He wanted to continue doing what he was doing. The problem is, and I don't know how else to put it, but it seemed like there was a very generous compensation package for him when Vince was there. And TKO just did not see the same thing. But this is consistent with a lot of TKO issues. There's been a whole lot of, like, we're going to talk about what Natalya wrote in her book later. That's going to be the second part of our video. But there seems to be a great deal of contract issues with TKO now. Whether it's this Ridge Holland thing, or this Andrade, whether it's Karrion Kross. Again and again, we're seeing that TKO couldn't give a shit less about the talent. I mean, even less than Vince. And Vince is historically one of the most cutthroat vampires in the history of the business. It seems TKO just values the talent even less. At the same time, I don't believe in being in the bag for anybody, because I don't think it really helps people understand what's going on if you're going to pick a side and stay in it. The guy did publicly, I don't know if it was called a public disparagement. I don't think he did that. I think that him putting that statement out, it certainly didn't help his case, but I didn't look at that as a public disparagement of WWE. I looked at it like he was venting, you know? He was frustrated, which of course he is. He's suffering through an injury. And just being injured alone is frustrating enough. But the double up of you're injured, oh yeah, and you won't have a job to come back to, and I don't know, I'm assuming he lives in the United States now. Again, this guy lived in England. He moved from England to the United States for this job. He's been working in the United States. I think he brought his children over here. I'm pretty sure he didn't have the kids, since he been here. And they are essentially building a life in the United States with dad traveling, working in WWE. And now all of that has been yanked from underneath them. There's been quite a few talent that WWE brought them over here, and then they lost their WWE contract, and now they have to struggle to figure out how they're going to stay in the country. There was a time, I think, around the pandemic, where there was a couple of talent they had brought in from other countries, had gotten cut during the pandemic, and those folks were like, "What the hell? I came to this country to work here, and now you just basically saying, oh well, take it on the chin." That's something. That's something. I don't look at it like he disparaged the company by saying that they were doing the bare minimum. That's frustration. He is still in need of a paycheck. Now, him being fired is exceptionally petty, because they was only going to pay him for another 10 days anyway. If his contract was going to expire on November the 14th, which is what Meltzer said, he only had 10 more days anyway. So it seems nonsensical to go ahead and just fire the guy now instead of waiting the next 10 days out. So what, did they cut one of his paychecks? Is that what they're trying to say here? And then maybe by firing him, They can slap him with a non-compete. I just don't see the benefit of this. The guy can't work. He can't do anything already. He's stuck in neutral right now. So I definitely understand his frustration. I don't really see what he said as being disparaging to the company, but they thought so. So I want to know what pencil pushing dweeb in WWE thought that this was disparaging. You know what he said. We look at this guy, and from everything that we know, he was a competent pro wrestler who was trying his very best. He, of course, got a wave of negativity because he injured Big E, which was completely an accident. Yes, people are still tearing him apart for that even today, but it was a complete accident. It could have happened to anybody. And this situation is extremely ugly. And it does make WWE look extremely bad. This doesn't help them at all when it comes to talent relations and how talent should view working for the company. That's, of course, assuming everything that we see on the surface is true. There's always that option that there's something that we're missing. All right. There's always that option of WWE's not going to go out there and defend themselves, you know. But it's clear that sympathy is needed in order uh to get Ridge Holland over the finish line of being able to protect himself and keep his home. And playing the victim is a good way to get sympathy. And I'm not, again, it doesn't matter whether it's true or false. He is playing the victim. You know, one of these stories, let me look and see which one of them. One of the Meltzer reports is saying that he basically should have known this was coming, that he was going to get released. And I think there is some evidence of that. The evidence of that is that he took a pay cut to go down to NXT. So that means that likely he was filled in about something. And he was like, how about if I take a pay cut? Can I stick around then? Maybe I can work myself back up or whatever. And they accepted that under the auspices that he's not going to be around much longer. Let's just, give him some time to get himself together. Now, of course, there's a lot of people who they like to take sides in these arguments. Most of the time, people take the side of the talent, and they're like, "How was he supposed to know he was going to get hurt?" Well, that's not the part that they're saying he's supposed to know about. They are saying, if Meltzer is correct, which I don't really want to assume that he is, but if he's correct, the issue here is that Ridge Holland should have known that they weren't renewing his contract, and that the non-renewal of the contract was likely told to him before he got hurt. All right. Now, I don't know how long they would say you're not going to renew your contract before they actually do it. I don't know. His chances are he probably had an original contract that was ripped up and he signed a new one with the pay cut. That might be a shorter contract. Again, we won't know for sure unless there's a lawsuit or something like that. We won't know for sure. We'll just be able to know his side of the story, which eventually he's going to end up on Ariel Helwani or Chris Van Vliet talking about this situation. But it does seem very unfair that he's in this situation. And it's still a bad situation even if the guy wasn't hurt because the guy was losing his job. and he took a wild pay cut in order to keep his job. It's always a tragedy. Well, maybe tragedy is a too strong a term, but it's always for lack of a better term, let's just go with tragedy. When somebody needs to lose their job, when somebody is fired, somebody is laid off, there's always those financial earthquakes in life. You know, somebody gets sick, you know, somebody gets cancer or something like that, man, you're looking at very, very costly situation. You know, somebody gets hurt and that person is the breadwinner, you got to change your lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? So that's life and it happens. And he's got to find some way of filling in the void because he can't wrestle. But that doesn't mean he can't do anything. There has to be some other things for him to do to be able to earn money. And hopefully he gets real creative. You know, maybe he starts up a YouTube channel or maybe he starts playing video games on stream or something like that. I don't know. But this is a really tough situation for him to be in. Now let's talk about the pay situation because a lot of people feel like WWE should pay you extra if you're going to work somewhere else, but that's not the case at all. I don't see why you would even expect it. You're still working for WWE. You're just in a different venue, you know? That would be like, if you were a teacher and they sent you to a different school every once in a while, you shouldn't get paid more. You're going to get paid the same thing. You're just going to work in a different place. So I think people who are surprised by that, again, are just there's a lot of people who follow wrestling who are just not familiar with life. As somebody who works in an office, sometimes, and this has happened a couple of times since since I've been working in my position, people from other hospitals would come to us and to train. You know, they're still being paid by their employer. They're not being paid by ours. Their employer is paying them to travel to Detroit to train at this hospital. And then once their training or whatever is done here, they go back to their hospital. But they're on that hospital's payroll the entire time. It's the exact same thing here. Why would anybody expect you would get paid more? If WWE is saying, hey, yeah, they want to book you for a TNA show, clearly WWE is paying you to go. Just fucking go. Why would you think that you would get a paycheck from WWE and TNA or that WWE would pay you more? That doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. And I can't think of too many jobs that would pay you extra. If it's part of your job to get booked in the way that the company who is booking you is, kind of suggests, then it doesn't matter where they send you at that point. You can accept or reject, the opportunity. Clearly, you're not a slave. It's not like they're going to drag you to Nashville for the TNA tapings or whatever. But this is a guy who, again, was trying to stay relevant, was trying to do whatever he can to stay on the payroll. So if it was go down to Evolve, okay, fine, whatever. Hey, we're going to put you over here in TNA for a bit. Okay, fine, whatever. And that's the sad part for me. It's not that he didn't get paid additionally. I wouldn't even expect that. It's that the guy was doing everything he was trying to do. He was trying his best. Say, okay, I'm not needed on SmackDown. How about NXT? Okay, I do a little bit of a run at NXT. Oh, that's not working out. Okay, I'll do the Evolve thing. Whatever. Okay, I did that. Okay, maybe TNA. He was trying to stay busy, trying to earn his keep, and it seemed like no matter what he did, he was he was ice skating uphill. They just did not want the guy. And it's just unfortunate that he got hurt near the end of his contract. And from his side, there seems to be a whole lot of bitterness because he tried his best and they were rejecting him. Specifically in his initial comment when he said that he wasn't getting a new contract. That's what he wanted. It was even mentioned in the GoFundMe thing. No pay, no new contract. That's what he wanted. He wanted his job. He didn't want to go out there and embarrass WWE or himself. He wanted to keep working. He wanted to, he's hurt. He's been hurt in WWE before. He's been hurt playing rugby or whatever before. He knows how this thing goes. You go out there, you get your stuff together, and then you come right back to the team. And it sucked that he was not going to be able to come back to the team. It's a very human reaction. I don't look at it from the perspective, again, that he was trying to breach his contract or piss anybody off at WWE, but that he was venting his frustration at how bad the situation was. And other people blew it up because this is what wrestling fans do. Oh, the company looks terrible. Oh, somebody needs to start a union. Oh, he needs to file a lawsuit and all this stuff. And no doubt he's going to run with it now because there's some financial incentive for him to do so. And I think this is a bad situation for him to be in. It's doubly bad because he could end up like Ryback. This was a guy that WWE picked and trained themselves. He was not, as far as I know, he wasn't an indie wrestler, unless he wrestled independently over in England. Therefore, there weren't going to be a lot of opportunities for him in the United States anyway on a wrestling tip. AEW is not going to touch him with a 10-foot pole unless they're going to stick him at the bottom of Ring of Honor to do jobs. He might have had an opportunity in TNA, which I thought was likely the setup, is that this was an alley-oop to TNA. He was going to go work for TNA for a little bit under WWE contract, and then when his WWE contract expires, he was going to go work for TNA. That's what I thought. Now I think that's even in question because of how close TNA and WWE are together. Who knows whether that's even going to continue to happen? And outside of TNA, the only other place for him to go is MLW. And who knows how much of that $20 million they was able to steal from Vince, they still got. So I feel bad for the guy, really. He's very frustrated. I don't know the legal in and outs of whether this was a breach of contract. I'm almost certain it's not. I mean, I'm looking at it from the perspective that I didn't see anything in there that really disparaged the company too much, except for saying that he hoped that they would do more by poking out that they did the bare minimum. His desire for them to do more, I don't see is a uh, a disparaging of the company in question. But who the hell knows what's going on these days, man? WWE, TKO, they're something else. I want to get into this Vince McMahon Natalya story in a minute. Um, I just need to find where I put it in my bookmarks. I want to talk about that one next. Oop, let's search my bookmarks. I just saved it earlier. I'm gonna get into y'all's responses in a second. Is this it? Is this the thing that I was looking for? Yeah, this is it. Let's look at some of you guys' responses and then we'll get into this Natalia thing. WG Phil says, did you see the Michael Jackson trailer? It seems they won't cover Dangerous as that era got legal trouble as they can't cover the trial, but said if this was successful, it could be a sequel. I did. Um, it was okay. I'm not really a big idea. Not a big idea. I'm not really a big fan of bioflicks. Um, his nephew looks like a lot like him though, so at least that's nice. WG Phil says some fans who wanted him fired and blacklisted 3 years ago over Big E now want to make him a martyr. Well, they just want to use him for their fed bad stuff. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. Alan McCormick says, how are they sticking it to him by not paying him for 8 days? Well, the fact that he doesn't have any money, I'm pretty sure 8 days is still an important bit of cash. If any little bit helps, that 8 days actually matters. Jesus Layla says Ridge is injury prone. There's no way they were going to keep him. There's also a whole lot of generic to him. There's some potential there, but he's pretty generic. And as it stands right now, Triple H is not interested in building talent. He's interested in bringing in people who are already have a lot of experience. Even though, again, Triple H was the guy who was behind um, NXT UK. So Triple H is the guy who more than likely was the reason he was even brought to WWE. So, I mean, I don't know, man. This sucks. Kyle Fletcher, Nick Jackson, and Gender donated $1,000 as well. Praise be to them. They're very good. Chelsea Green, her service better off feuding with Zoe Stark. Have Ivory return, start alliance, right to censor. No, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Um, let's see. Jesus said confident isn't a word I would use. Well, I don't think you know what wrestling is. If you think he was like that bad, that he was an incompetent wrestler, that would mean he had 2 left feet. He was falling all over the place. Like, no, he was just generic. If it was 1979 or something like that, he'd have been a pretty decent mid to upper mid card baby face. It wouldn't have been nothing special about him. Especially in a territory, you got to kiss some young girls and shake some hands. Wouldn't have been nothing. He wouldn't have been like a huge superstar or anything like that. But again, they signed the guy in like 2019, maybe even before that, maybe 2018, 2017, something like that. And it's been several years already. And I guess they figure we didn't got everything we was going to get out of him. So there's nothing they can do. Jesus says there's thousands of people in Holland's position right now. A lot of people have lost their jobs. Yeah, I mean there's a lot of people screwed right now. It's the nature of the beast, my dude. The beast keeps feeding. Um, Jesus said he should have quit after the pay cut. The writing was on the wall with him and how he was not able to foresee this. That job has no job security. Well, the job has job security, but you have to, it depends a whole lot. For instance, I wake up every day and wonder how the hell is Apollo Crews still working in WWE? I mean, every single day, I'm just dumbfounded by the fact that Apollo Crews is still there. I don't know when the last time I saw him. and yet they've released over a dozen people. Apollo Crews remains under contract. How? How? Like it's weird. Like I love Apollo Crews, I really do, but he doesn't do anything. I don't know if he's injured right now. I don't know if he's back and he's just wrestling on main event. I have no idea what that guy's doing. But there is a whole lot of guys like him on WWE's roster, you know? And people like Apollo Crews, I mean, he's been in WWE 10 years, I think. You know? It's a whole so there's job security there. It's just not as secure for some people. And again, we also don't know what kind of guy he was backstage either. So he might have been a dickhead. We don't know. Something might have put him on the chopping block. I'm pretty sure Hurt and Big E put him on the chopping block for sure. WWE TNA Full says Ridge screwed Ridge, VK McMahon, circa 1997. David Carradine's closet. He should have just taken the hint. He sucked and they didn't want him. Yeah, they didn't want him. It was clear that they didn't want him. And the fact that they were willing, I don't know if they offered him a 55% pay cut or if he offered to take one. Whichever one it was, they weren't interested. If they're talking about cutting half your pay, shit, man, they don't want you, bro. I mean, you didn't build your entire life around a certain amount of money, and now you're saying half? Mm, shit. I don't know, man. I don't know, but yeah, I would have taken the hint. WG Field says, wouldn't he get paid for a 90-day non-compete? That could be it. They terminated his contract, but they terminated it for cause, is what they're saying. So it would have to be a compensated termination if they give him a non-compete. But he can't wrestle anyway, so I don't know. If there is a non-compete clause, we won't know about it until he can actually work again, which they say is not going to be until like May of next year. So we don't know what the hell the guy's going to do from now until May. Like I know there's a lot of wrestlers who are giving him money, and he's gonna do okay on that tip. But maybe WWE's gonna try to slip him something. Who knows? But I don't like how this is all. I just don't see why they fired him. The guy only had a few days left. The fuck you fire him for? Essentially, you just jacked up his final paycheck. That's pretty much all you did. The guy had like 7 or 8 days left anyway. This is ridiculous. The Generation Sharingan, good to see you, brother. Zoe Stark, yeah, how does she still have a job? Praise Jesus. Big Armada says it's kind of weird how Holland gets heat from fans for the Big E injury, but people gave Samoa Joe a pass for the Tyson Kidd injury, and I like Joe. I do too. Natalya apparently wrote a book about the response that she got from, or she felt from WWE about Tyson Kidd's injury. We're going to talk about that in a second. So we're going to come back to this. But the whole time I was reading that, I was wondering what kind of heat Samoa Joe had gotten himself into at that point in time. Pete, Don, and Tyler Bate been with WWE since the UK tournament, and now they're mass luchadors, H-man approval. It seems to me like if he wants you, he will find somewhere to put you. And Pete Dunne was working as a producer in AAA. The guy's not even 30 yet, I don't think. Like this, they're retiring the fucking guy already. So they're hiring these dudes. If they really want them around, they're plugging them in somewhere. So clearly they were not interested in him. If he was a Triple H favorite, he'd be somewhere on this roster. Even if he was doing something silly, he'd be doing something. Yeah, 55%, half, half of that thing. They cut his paycheck in half. I'd have been pissed. There's no way I would have been able to stick around for that. It's too disrespectful. Half, too disrespectful. 20%, that's tough. 40%, that's nuts. 55%, oh, shit. I don't know if I would have been able to take that one. Like maybe as a single man, I would have taken it. You know, but he's got children. I don't know if I'd have been able to do that. That's a tough one, dog. That's tough. Um, all right, let's get into this Natalya thing because I want to wrap this up pretty quickly. I want to get out of here by 9:30, even though it's probably be more than 9:30. This one might take us to 10. So Fightful posted excerpts from Natalya's book. And they said Natalya reveals how WWE and Vince McMahon treated Tyson Kidd after his injury. Says she couldn't talk about the injury at work or she would be let go. And they misspelled would. WOLD. Wold. Or she wold be let go. Wold. Jeremy Lambert, you're a genius. All right. So this is from Natalya's book, The Last Beating Heart. She says, back home, TJ was still recovering from his surgery. And even though it had been 9 months since he was injured, he still hadn't heard anything from WWE or Vince about any restitution for his injury. TJ was no longer able to wrestle and now had a spinal fusion at the very, very highest vertebrae in his neck, which allowed him only half the movement he had before. It was a serious condition TJ would have for the rest of his life. Some feelers were sent out to see if TJ would like to go to NXT and help out. But TJ didn't want to be coaching people on how to achieve their dreams a month or two after losing his. The idea of that hurt him too much, and I completely understood why. Interesting. So she says, especially after the company had decided to pretend his injury never happened. TJ wasn't waiting around for an invitation to stay with the company. He was waiting for a call or a text from Vince. He was waiting for a simple apology, but it never came. Nothing did. Even back when he first checked his phone after waking up from surgery, it was full of best wishes from WWE wrestlers and all around the world, but nothing from Vince. There was no text, no call, nothing from Vince asking if he was okay. TJ thought in WWE's eyes, it was like if they never mentioned it, then it never happened. But that just made TJ feel he didn't matter to them. And that ate him up. We kept waiting in the hope that Vince would reach out and acknowledge what had happened to TJ. I told TJ they'd eventually have a conversation with him, and we could all work through this and figure out what the next steps in his life. But TJ was tired of being forgotten and dismissed, and Hope wasn't going to cut it anymore. So he hired someone to be a voice that Vince might respond to. All I want is an apology, TJ told his lawyer. That absolutely won't happen, his lawyer said, in return, because that will be admitting fault. TJ didn't want to file a lawsuit at all. TJ just wanted Vince to address what happened to him in their ring. He agonized over it for months because he didn't want the tension between himself and WWE to escalate, and neither did I. It was the last thing in the world that I wanted. But after 8 months of radio silence from Vince, TJ eventually decided to send Vince a letter. In that correspondence, TJ said he wasn't okay with what happened and listed the series of events that led to his injury, as well as the dire medical implications it would incur for the rest of his life. He stated in the letter that he wanted to put it all in writing in case Vince wasn't aware of what happened to him. TJ said that because of his injury, not only could he never wrestle again, he couldn't even move his head, and Vince hadn't reached out a single time to check if he was okay. After the letter was sent, TJ received some calls from WWE management asking him about going to NXT again. TJ felt like they were offering him a job just so he'd move on that the company was relying on his love of the business and his reputation of being a good soldier to make all of this go away without having to actually address it. Their account of what happened was different than TJ's. They denied everything and finished by saying that if TJ talked about his injury at work or disparaged the company, they would trigger a clause in my contract and let me go. I was in shock at their position. TJ was now even more upset. I had tried my best to walk the line of going back to work while also being there for TJ. I had never been a bad employee. As a matter of fact, I was probably too much of a pushover. But this was the moment when TJ and I decided we'd have enough of being nice and being quiet. I felt like I couldn't emotionally take much more. We were trying to be reasonable, but sometimes trying to reason with the machine just doesn't work. So we go forward to 2017. It says WWE was developing its internal employee portal where they could post schedules, updates, and talent could request time off from talent relations. The IT team beavered away building the infrastructure. TJ got a message to his phone that said his days off he'd requested had been approved. The exact number of days he had been out with his injury. At first, he thought nothing of it. Then it dawned on him that he didn't want it listed anywhere in WWE's corporate system, that it was him who had requested time away from the company when he was in fact injured. So he called WWE and was called back by Triple H, who said it was a mistake and they'd rectify it right away. He told TJ that they were still in the testing phase of the app and that he was never supposed to get that message. I'm sorry about that, Hunter said. And while the conversation started about one thing, it bled into another as Hunter asked TJ how he was. Honestly, TJ told him, I don't understand how I can get an apology about an app, but not about my neck. Hunter fell silent. Maybe he knew it wasn't right. Then he asked, can you leave it with me? TJ knew that at this point in Hunter's career, he wasn't the overall decision maker. He was just the person asked to relay messages from Vince. But TJ agreed to let Hunter handle it. He wasn't even sure what that meant, and he'd been told by his lawyer to not expect any movement from WWE's side unless our side filed a lawsuit. But the next day, Vince texted TJ 18 months after he broke his neck. He said he was sorry for what happened and that he was going against the advice of his legal team by apologizing, but felt it was the right thing to do. Now, I had to put in the term legal team because those are the people who were telling him not to talk to him. She just put the advice of his team, but it would have to be legal team. Continuing. Saw TJ reading that text, I could see that the hurt moving a little, weight of the world becoming just a fraction lighter. You should call Vince, I said, because you have so much to offer outside the ring. And to my surprise, the next day, TJ did. Vince missed a Monday Night Raw taping and flew to meet TJ in person and talk. The conversation went well, and TJ felt Vince was very sincere in his regret about how everything was handled. I think they found a lot of common ground, and Vince came to learn and appreciate a lot more about TJ and his outlook on life, how TJ was someone with an extraordinary amount of drive, a survivor, but never a victim. Vince said he'd help TJ do whatever he wanted to do in the company as soon as TJ figured out what that was. After this, it was decided that he would shadow Jamie Noble and become a WWE producer. So here is another good example of what's going on here. So TJ is injured. He's lost his dream. He wanted to be a wrestler ever since he was a little kid. He gets hurt in a freak injury in WWE's ring. And WWE legal is like, well, you can't acknowledge it. You can't go out here and apologize to the guy. You can't contact him. If you're in the office, you can't contact him. That kind of stuff has legal implications, right? So he doesn't know that. TJ doesn't know that. So he's sitting around trying to figure out why Vince isn't personally contacting him. He doesn't know about all this legal stuff. Now, the weird thing about this is, and this is the frustrating thing about reading it, is that it ended the way WWE wanted it to end months before this, right? Like they offered him to go to NXT to help out months before he actually did it. So it was TJ himself that didn't want to do it. And then he contacted a lawyer because he was upset and was considering filing a lawsuit. And WWE still didn't move, even when he got a letter from a lawyer. They still didn't push to, oh my God, he's going to sue us. Let's now jump on this and figure out what's going on. No, it was over a year before they finally contacted this guy. Okay. And a lot of this is, again, legal, not wanting to admit fault, not wanting to put that kind of stuff out there. Obviously, not wanting to put Vince in that kind of situation. And it's very impersonal, this corporate stuff. And I can completely understand from the perspective of the talent who's injured. You can't work. You've lost your dream. You don't know, your wife still works there. So you can't kick up too much dust or both of you are going to be unemployed. Now, they put it in because wrestling guys apparently don't work in real life. They put it in the headline. She couldn't talk about the injury at work or she would be let go. Like, yeah, that you can't do that. Like you can't just be at work being super loud and ridiculous about people being hurt. That's obnoxious for starters. Secondly, it's a HIPAA violation. Like he has medical privacy. You can't go into all of that stuff. All right. Especially not, too much in person. And she certainly can't go up to Vince and demand an apology or anything like that. That's just going to be inappropriate. So, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that it took 18 months. But there is a pretty solid reason why it took 18 months. WWE has to see what this guy's going to do. Again, they offered him to go to NXT to help out. And this is Natalya's own words. She said, in her own words, some feelers were sent out to see if TJ would like to go to NXT and help out. But TJ didn't want to be coaching people on how to achieve their dreams a month or two after losing his. So that means that WWE asked him if he was going to NXT long before he got a conversation with Vince, which means they already had this plan after he broke his neck that they were going to put him somewhere in the company. And he said no. So all of this was very dramatic for no reason. Because TJ wanted a specific conversation with Vince. When, if he didn't went to go to the NXT or something like that, he could have eventually run into Vince and went and talked to him. We didn't need a lawyer and the rest of this stuff if you was going to go back to work there anyway. You should get a lawyer if you're going to sue him. And in fact, his lawyer told them, his lawyer, meaning TJ's lawyer, told TJ and Natalya, they're not going to talk to you. Legally, it would be dumb for them to talk to you. So they already know what the issue is, that the issue is not personal. The issue is legal. Now, there's a lot of people who wonder why Samoa Joe never got to be WWE champion. I think this stares you right in the face and tells you why this guy was never WWE champion. And look, I know Samoa Joe, it was a complete accident, freak accident. He did that move 1,000 times. I know Bret Hart really gave Samoa Joe some shit about it. It's tough. Samoa Joe has talked about it several times. I want to play a short of him talking about this on Chris Van Vliet, just so he has some complete information.
Remains the largest regret of my career. You know, just that happened, and
there's nothing you could have done about it.
Yeah, but I mean, that doesn't change things for Tyson. Doesn't change things, you know, for a guy who is probably one of the most passionate people in the world of professional wrestling, for a guy who has an amazing mind for it. WWE is fortunate to have him in their employ.
When you hit it on him, did you think anything was wrong?
No, not at all. The only thing that even hinted that there's something wrong is when Cesaro looked back up at me, and I know when Cesaro was like concerned, and then I was like, oh my God, I hope everything's okay. And then we got in the back, and he went to the hospital, and everything got checked out. But I mean, the whole circumstances regarding that, like, it makes me sick to this day that guy is not out there being the Tyson Kid that I know that he is.
So he stopped using the Muscle Buster after that in WWE. Of course, we know that he does it now. He was still talking about this in 2025, actually. Said that it still haunts him that TJ Wilson was injured. So it was a tough situation, but it, a lot of people don't. Again, all you had to do was read the motherfucking thing, man. This is so frustrating to me because I looked at the headline and was like, now, everybody should know that if you get injured at the workplace, the company cannot admit fault. That's you opening yourself up for a lawsuit. You're not about to do that. I mean, you're not about to do that. So what were they expecting? And then I read it and I was like, okay, it's just that they were frustrated. Her husband is going through this really tough time. He's got this neck surgery. He can barely move. There's probably some depression there. He's lost his dream. It's a highly emotionally charged situation, and they're looking for an emotional catharsis, not a financial one. It's not about money. They would have sued him if it was about money. It was, I sacrificed everything for the company, including my body. I can't get a phone call. TJ worked in WWE since 2007, so 10 years. I think it's 2005, actually. So it might have been like 12 years that he was in WWE. Because they went through the developmental system at first, too, right? Him and, what's that other dipshit? Teddy Hart. They were in developmental together. And Davey Smith Jr. And they were on the main roster in 2007. And he got injured in 2016, 2017. So almost, 10 years of straight of wrestling in WWE? And then all of a sudden, nothing. You didn't hear from the guy. I can understand why he might have taken that personally. Again, it's a human reaction. You work with these people every day. You see them all the time, years and years and years. And you wonder why all these people can say, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Yada, yada. But this guy can't. Why this guy can't? Because if he said something, you can say, well, of course the company was negligent. Even Vince said so. And the company is fucked. So they say, no, you can't talk to this fucking guy. You can't talk to him. Can't say anything. It doesn't matter what the wrestlers say. It only matters what the management says. And whatever Triple H did, he kind of worked his magic, and Vince just said, fuck it, if we get sued, we get sued. It's not like he'd have been the first guy to get to sue WWE. Would not have been the first time he got sued by WWE. So this was a learning experience. I'm pretty sure this also probably One of the reasons why Vince didn't like Natalya. Pretty sure that didn't help matters. The injury was in 2015. Okay, that's fair enough. So yes, he was in WWE like 10 years about that time. Yeah. Because I don't know how long he was in developmental, but I know he was on the main roster in 2007, 2008. Because that was around the time Natalya first started coming in. I think they really became a kind of a, I don't want to say a big deal, but they were like all over the place in 2010. But they were in the company around that time. Unknown says this reminded me of how they treated Luna Vachon. Well, Luna Vachon had untreated bipolar disorder, so. AJ3 says Owen broke Steve Austin's neck and Brett said nothing. Don't you think that double standard hypocrisy? Steve Austin also didn't he break Masahiro Chono's neck? So I shouldn't laugh because that's not funny, but yeah. Also, from our understanding, Owen didn't even say anything after he broke Steve Austin's neck. So it was a nasty thing. But Samoa Joe still feels really bad about it. It's a very bad situation for that guy to be in. And it probably derailed his career quite a bit too. WG Field says Tyson was also playable in 2016 and 2017, even after the injury. So he wasn't forgotten like Natalya thought he was. I'm thinking that she's relaying how TJ feels, and how you feel is not necessarily reality, right? And when you can't do what you used to do, and you have this dramatic, life-changing circumstance, you tend to take things like this personally, you know? And maybe TJ was feeling like they don't really respect me, they don't really care about me, yada yada yada. Yeah, they still paying me. Yeah, they offered me to go to NXT. All these things. There's a beautiful video um, about how depression works. I want to post it in the Discord because I can't post it here. But it's a guy who's doing a card trick, and he says basically, you see one thing and you assume everything underneath, right? So it's like if you do a card trick and you see one card face down on the deck, you assume all the other cards are face down too when they're not. And when people who are in those sorts of states of mind, you make that assumption. TJ could have seen things saying, Vince is not talking to me. He hasn't apologized. He hasn't checked in on me. Therefore, nobody underneath him really cares. So he's ignoring all of these other people who are like, yeah, how you doing? Yada, 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 keeping up with him, offering him jobs and stuff like that, which is an extension of, you know, the company reaching out to him to see how he's doing and to care about him. But he's fixated on that top card that Vince himself has not done this. Therefore, they don't care. So it's hard to say that feelings are a rational thing. They're not, you know? So, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I would say people getting injured in WWE is an interesting thing because they have a history of really looking out, but they also have a history of, kicking dirt in people's faces. And it seemed like Ridge Holland is a guy, they just kind of like, look, who cares about this fucking guy? Who cares? Meanwhile, other people who get hurt, WWE is kind of like, oh no, we got to take care of them for the rest of their lives. It was the same thing with the drug addicts and stuff. How certain people like Scott Hall got offered rehab so many times, and then there were other wrestlers, I forget which one, but they asked for WWE to pay them to go to rehab, and they said no. Like, that's a weird thing that occurs, and I'm not sure, it's the right thing, but it's kind of odd. That's how WWE operates. You know, I think I nailed it. About an hour on the dot, almost. Was it an hour on the dot? Oh, it's a little over an hour. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for your time. Talk to you guys later. Have a great weekend. Peace out.